All right, folks, let's talk about Niccolò Machiavelli. This guy was a 16th-century Italian philosopher, writer, and all-around political junkie. He's best known for his book, The Prince, which is basically a how-to guide for rulers who want to stay in power no matter what. Now, Machiavelli lived in a time of serious political turmoil in Italy. Backstabbing, power struggles, and shifting alliances were all part of the daily grind. So, it's no surprise that his writings reflect that cutthroat environment. The Prince isn't exactly your typical feel-good story. It's raw, it's cynical, and it throws traditional morality right out the window. But here's the thing, it's also incredibly insightful and surprisingly relevant, even centuries later. Ready to dive into the mind of a political mastermind? Buckle up, because things are about to get Machiavellian. Machiavelli believed that power is the name of the game in politics. And he wasn't talking about the kind of power you get from winning a game of Monopoly. He meant the raw, unfiltered kind of power that allows you to control people and events. According to Machiavelli, rulers shouldn't be afraid to get their hands dirty in the pursuit of power. They need to be ruthless, cunning, and willing to do whatever it takes to stay on top. Now, before you start thinking Machiavelli was some kind of power-hungry tyrant, hear me out. He wasn't advocating for cruelty for the sake of cruelty. He simply believed that in a dog-eat-dog world, nice guys often finish last. Machiavelli's views on power might seem harsh, but they reflect the realities of politics, even today. In a world where everyone's vying for influence, sometimes you gotta play hardball to get what you want. Here's where things get really interesting. Machiavelli argued that morality and politics don't always mix. Shocking, I know. He believed that rulers shouldn't let things like ethics and morals get in the way of their goals. Now, I'm not saying you should go around breaking all the rules, but Machiavelli believed that sometimes rulers need to make tough choices, even if it means bending the rules a little, or a lot. He famously said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." In other words, it's more important for a ruler to be respected and obeyed than to be liked. This idea might seem pretty controversial, and for good reason. But think about it. How many times have we seen politicians make unpopular decisions in the name of the greater good? It's a slippery slope, folks, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. So, how does one actually go about being a Machiavellian ruler? Well, Machiavelli had a few ideas about that too. He laid out a whole playbook of political tactics in The Prince, some of which might sound familiar. For example, he stressed the importance of appearances. He believed that rulers need to cultivate a public image that projects strength, intelligence, and decisiveness. Sound familiar? It's basically the political version of fake it till you make it. Machiavelli also believed in the power of deception. He argued that it's perfectly acceptable for rulers to lie, cheat, and manipulate their way to the top. Hey, all's fair in love and war, right? Or at least in Renaissance Italian politics. Of course, these tactics are all about strategy and achieving specific goals. It's like playing a high-stakes game of chess where every move counts. And just like in chess, sometimes you gotta sacrifice a pawn to protect your king. Section 5. Modern Machiavellians? Oh, they're out there. Now, you might be thinking, okay, John, this Machiavelli guy sounds like a real piece of work. Are you telling me there are actually people like this in the world today? You bet your bottom dollar there are. In fact, we see examples of Machiavellian tactics in politics all the time. Think about those politicians who seem to be more concerned with their own power than with serving the people. Or, how about those leaders who are willing to bend the truth or exploit people's fears to get ahead? Yeah, those guys are straight out of The Prince. Now, I'm not saying that all politicians are Machiavellian, but it's undeniable that the principles Machiavelli outlined centuries ago are still very much in play in the cutthroat world of modern politics. Section 6. The Teflon Don, a masterclass in Machiavellianism? Let's take a look at a more recent example, shall we? Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States, often exhibited behavior that could be seen as straight out of Machiavelli's playbook. Love him or hate him, there's no denying that Trump was a master of manipulating the media and controlling the narrative. He understood the importance of appearances and wasn't afraid to create a larger-than-life persona to project an image of strength and success. He also wasn't afraid to bend the truth or make promises he couldn't keep if it meant furthering his own agenda. Remember those campaign promises? Yeah, some of those seem to have gotten lost in translation. Now, I'm not here to debate the merits of Trump's policies or presidency, but there's no denying that his approach to politics often aligned with Machiavelli's ideas about power, pragmatism, and the importance of winning at all costs. Section 7. Politics and Morality. A fine line to walk. The thing about Machiavelli's ideas is that they force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the nature of power and the compromises that are sometimes made in the pursuit of it. It's easy to say that politicians should always be ethical and principled, but in the real world, things aren't always so black and white. Sometimes, leaders are faced with impossible choices, and the right decision isn't always clear. The question is, how far is too far? When does pragmatism cross the line into ruthlessness? And is it ever acceptable to prioritize political expediency over moral principles? These are tough questions with no easy answers, but they're questions that we need to keep asking ourselves if we want to understand the complexities of power and the challenges of leadership. Section 8. The Legacy of the Prince. Still relevant after all these years. So, why are we still talking about some Italian philosopher from the 1500s? Well, because Machiavelli's ideas about power, morality, and political strategy are as relevant today as they were centuries ago. The Prince isn't just a historical artifact, it's a timeless guide to the dark arts of politics, offering insights into the motivations and behaviors of those who seek and wield power. Whether you agree with Machiavelli's ideas or not, there's no denying that his work has had a profound impact on political thought and continues to spark debate and discussion even today. It's a testament to the enduring power of Machiavelli's insights that his work continues to resonate with readers centuries after it was written. Section 9. So, is it okay to be Machiavellian? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, my friends, is not so simple. Machiavelli's ideas can be a slippery slope. On the one hand, it's important to be realistic about the nature of power and the challenges of leadership. On the other hand, we don't want to live in a world where politicians feel justified in being ruthless and manipulative in the pursuit of their goals. Ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide where we stand on the spectrum of Machiavellianism. How much are we willing to compromise our values in the name of pragmatism? And what price are we willing to pay for power? These are questions that each of us must grapple with, both as individuals and as citizens of a democratic society. Section 10. Machiavelli and You. What's the takeaway? So, what can we learn from this whole Machiavellian adventure? Well, for starters, we can learn to be more aware of the tactics and strategies that politicians use to gain and maintain power. We can also learn to be more critical of the narratives that were being sold, both by those in power and by the media. And we can learn to be more engaged citizens, demanding accountability from our leaders and holding them to a higher standard. Machiavelli might have been a cynic, but his work reminds us that we can't afford to be naive about the nature of power. We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to fight for the values we believe in. Because in the end, the future of our democracy depends on it, and that's a message that's as relevant today as it was in Machiavelli's time.